The next question we'll grapple with is that of loneliness. And I think I would like to start it this way. Let's just throw this out for anybody who would like to address it. A senior adult that I was just with last week, he was just bemoaning the fact that he thinks people are becoming more lonely, more isolated because of social networks. And I'm wondering what you think about that. Does anyone have an opinion about that? Are we becoming more lonely?
Well, I think we are because we do have more interactions with more people, but they don't necessarily get to look us in the eye, and we can put our statuses up there and the pictures we want up there and our best selves, but they don't have a chance to really look into our heart and to push back and to really know us. And so I think letting people know a version of us but not really feeling known creates even more loneliness.
Yeah, and I think feeling a connection to somebody has so much to do with seeing the little minutia, the tiny little nuances of their behavior, and saying I resonate with that, or I get that. Like that's what I grew up with. So without that specificity, you lose the kind of the connection. To just paint people in broad strokes and to experience people in broad strokes, I think is very isolating because you don't know if you're ever really properly understood.
I can go both ways on it. Like, as a writer, I'm alone all the time. But I met my girlfriend through Tinder. So it's like, yes, like online can and cannot work, but I also feel like even as a writer, it's more isolating because I can do everything online now. Like I can just email people instead of having to go meet them face to face about a topic, which is how I met Alice. I just met her through you and then talked to her via email. This is the first time I've ever met her. You're pretty great, by the way. Like, you're cool. So I could like agree and disagree that like, yes, like I feel like as in my profession, like it's really isolating because I don't have to go to New York anymore. I don't have to go to LA. Like I can do everything from my home, like in my gym shorts, eating eggs, like not talking to anybody. So yeah, I can see how that would feel that way.
Great, thanks, Chris. Well, speaking of greatness, Alice is going to address this issue for us.
Okay. My name's Alice Sullivan. I've been in publishing since 2003 as a ghostwriter and an editor. And I have struggled with loneliness probably since I was 6. And I feel, in my case, it has been a learned behavior and a survival instinct. I was a very, very outspoken and confident little kid. When I was 6, my dad started molesting me. And so all I wanted to do was be invisible. So I no longer made friends. I no longer wanted to hang out. I didn't want my friends over at the house because I knew it was bad. I didn't know what to do about it, but it was a secret that I was supposed to keep. And so, you know, growing up into your teenage years, every big milestone just felt like another reason that I stood out, and I did not want to stand out. And so that's affected, you know, my dating life, my friendships. Now, as an adult, I'm an introverted, self-employed writer. I'm single, and I'm just at home by myself all day. And I found that it's easier for me to, I don't know, cope with life like that, being lonely. I don't know that that's the best way, but my 2 biggest questions about loneliness is if it can be learned to be lonely, to be an introvert, you know, because you had to be that way. Can you relearn how to be an extrovert, or how can you reconnect with people? And then the second biggest question, I guess, that involves the church. I hear so many times, usually at women's conferences, you know, especially if there's a lot of single women, they'll say, "Oh, Jesus is my husband. The Lord is my husband." And I just feel like that's bullshit. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, it may work for other people. It really might. But I have never been able to pray enough, cry enough, do anything enough to feel a physical presence of God that made me feel less lonely. I can read and I can pray and I can be out in nature, and that distracts me, but I don't feel any less lonely. So it's almost, you know, am I doing something wrong? Am I not praying the right way? Am I not holding my hands the right way? I almost feel like I'm not doing something right, maybe, and that's why I still feel lonely. So is that something that anybody else has dealt with?
I think loneliness is a heart posture because you can be alone and not lonely. And you can be in a group and be lonely.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a heart condition, and like you were using it as a defense mechanism to be lonely, not just alone, but to be lonely.
Yeah.
That's different. So I don't really, I can't answer the whole question, but I just know that I think it's a heart posture, not a physical state of being with people or without.
Yeah. Well, I definitely can be in, we were talking about this earlier, I can be in networking situations. There's 100 people in the room, and I don't want to talk to any of them because I don't feel like I have any connection with them or anything in common or anything to talk about, and I just sort of feel like the awkward person at the brownie table. Which I'm okay with, but I know that's not
Not a bad place.
It's really, I really like brownies, but I don't know that it is something I'm at least aware of, and I'm trying to make strides to put myself out there and sort of reinvent myself.
There are a couple of things that come to mind as you were talking. First, one of the basic human needs is connection. The other thing, though, is when you're really young and your trust is violated, it is extremely difficult to build that trust back up. But connection can only happen when you have trust. So if you can't trust other people, it's almost impossible to make the connection. And as difficult as it seems, what you have to do is take a risk and trust somebody just a little. You got to be careful who you trust, but you got to start. You can't expect somebody else to come and be trust. You've got to be out there vulnerable and take the risk, or else you're always going to be isolated and lonely.
Yeah, from my high school, I just remember the song, "One is the loneliest number that you ever know." And
Let's sing it.
yeah, I've sung that song once. Really, thanks, Alice, for being so transparent and courageous in saying that. That's a big deal. So this is great conversation, great dialogue. What do you think, though, if you are just pissed at God? And I have certainly been there, where I'm just going, I just don't know about you. What are some ways to connect other than God, do you think?
Well, I when I think about the times in which I've been kind of the loneliest, whether that's in a room with a couple hundred people or just me and 3 people over a bottle of wine, it occurs to me that I've felt the loneliest when there's no disclosure going on, and I've kind of always thought, well, they're not opening up to me. But the reality is, for whatever reasons, I'm not in a mood to open up. I won't disclose. I won't share.
Yeah.
And maybe there's lots of reasons for that, but I have found that more of the problem's with me. It's not how other people are behaving around me or treating me. It's not a question of being around a bunch of people. And so it's risky to disclose. It's risky to share anything other than what you had for breakfast that day. But I think that starts to invite people to share back.
Yeah.
And I really think loneliness is the absence of disclosure, because that generates feelings and emotions and connection beyond just knowing facts about people.
That's good.
I think many of us that have grown up with a really strict religious background, we're strangers to ourselves because we've been taught that that's selfish. And so we give everybody else everything and give ourselves nothing. And so we become strangers to the person that is the most capable of helping us not be lonely. And so I think that's a really good point. It is risky, David. You said it. It's a risk.
Yeah, I mean, from the book perspective, you've edited and helped so many books. Like the memoirs, the nonfiction stories that do really well, like what's the factor that you think really brings them and sets them apart from everything else?
I am really good at coaxing people into being transparent with their own stories.
Right.
But I find that it's very shocking.
Lesson learned.
It is.
Right.
It is. It's sort of like I get to pretend to be somebody else, but I don't ever really have to be myself.
You're kind of a book therapist.
I am a book therapist.
She's been a good therapist for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's easy. I'm interested in other people. always I find other people's stories are fascinating. So it's very easy for me to pull more out of other people, as Randy knows. I don't know. I still have a wall up. I guess.
If you want to break that wall down, start writing your own story.
Yeah.
Ah, yes. You gave us a glimpse of your poetry a
That
few
is
weeks
true.
ago at lunch.
That is true.